Hello and welcome back to my series for International Women's Day, where I speak to some incredible women about their experience and expertise. As I mentioned in the first episode with my mum, I'm a woman who has a degree in computer science, but I actually haven't done any coding really. Bits here and there, but I haven't really done any coding since I graduated. Now, some research has shown that women who push their code to public GitHub repositories generally get higher ratings than men, which shows that women are just as capable of writing code as men. But we also need to understand that being a developer isn't the only job in IT. In today's episode, I'm joined by Menekse Stewart to talk all about her experience in the world of technology/marketing, and also to talk about how computing doesn't always mean code. Hello, thank you so much for joining me today, Menekse.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm honoured.
I'm very excited to have you here because I think we spoke just before this, but I was basically saying you're a great person to have because you work in so many different fields. You're kind of like jack of all trades, or expert of all trades, maybe I should say. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what it is you do?
Yeah, so I started out in search engine optimization. So I've worked in SEO mostly in freelance capacities since 2005. And then from that, I just really love marketing and have sort of explored different areas of marketing. And I actually work as a chief marketing officer now. So I'm a freelance CMO, and then I also teach SEO. So that's kind of half my time is spent doing those two things. And then the other half of my time, I run a tech business. So we basically, it's a marketplace community of people who create faith-based giftware. So things like stationery, homeware, candles, cushions, all that kind of thing. So yeah, my time is split between those two sides of things, but my love is marketing.
So obviously you work across lots of different tech fields, and they all have some of them, like marketing, are sort of female dominated areas, and then you have sort of your tech business, which is male dominated areas. So have you had any experiences that you kind of go, oh wow, that's really interesting, because in that field that's never happened to me, but in this field that happens to me a lot? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, so I think my experience with marketing has actually been that when I've been working with a client, it's been very much male dominated. And then when I've been working in freelance circles, there's a lot of female freelancers who are sort of working in marketing as contractors. So I don't know if that's because my background is more technical. So obviously, having worked in SEO for a number of years, SEO is just more technical because you're typically looking at the code base of a website and you're sort of optimizing some of the technical sides of things. I actually prefer more of the on-page SEO that looks at messaging and keywords because that fits in more with my marketing interests. But even just within SEO as a discipline, it's very, very male dominated. And I've had a lot of really good experiences with groups that are trying to be more inclusive. So Traffic Think Tank is a really good example of an SEO group who are just like a really great space. But if you're on social media having an opinion about SEO as a woman, the trolling is real. Like if I ever run ads to SEO training or anything like that, I always get at least 3 or 4 men being like, who do you think you are, type thing. And I think from a discipline point of view as well, it's an area that's like ripe for mansplaining because it's very jargon based. There's a lot of technical language, and I've spoken to so many women who just have outsourced their SEO straight away because of, like, jargon has been used and they've basically been marketing mansplained to about it. And so one of the things I take great joy in, now I do more education stuff, just helping small business owners get to grips with what SEO is. And I take so much delight in just being able to explain it in a way that is straightforward for like the average person to be able to understand, because SEO is really technical when you get into the nitty gritty of it, but the average business owner does not need to know that level of detail. And we see that, in so many different fields, we're faced with, the opportunity to learn about everything about something. So if you think about finance, like we don't need to know all of the like financial regulation services
Thank
when we go
goodness.
to talk to our, yeah, exactly, when we go to talk to our accountant. And if they started being like, well, you know, according to this tax code, blah blah blah, and like use the technical stuff that you need to learn to pass your chartered accountancy exam, if they started talking to us about that in our like annual accounts review meeting with them, we'd all feel completely overwhelmed, and we'd never want to engage with money or finance, and you know, that's its own issue. But the point is, in SEO, traditionally, people come at you with the stuff that you need to learn to pass exams and to do it like at a professional level. And so, of course, people find that really overwhelming because it's a level of detail they're actually never going to need to know in their sort of day to day. And yeah, I think hopefully being able to sort of break down barriers a little bit will give people confidence. Just be like, look, I don't need to know this level of detail, or it's not as complicated as you're making it out to be. But that's definitely one side of things from a marketing point of view. And I think within marketing, because I'm working on a more technical level, even now I'm working as a CMO, the stuff that I need support with is even more technical than I have capacity for. And so it's mostly men. And I would love to start seeing, you know, more and more women coming out. And there's groups like Women in Tech SEO who are just doing a great job of encouraging and supporting women in that field. So yeah, and then you know, technology as a whole tends to be more male dominated. I think particularly because with tech businesses, they're really expensive up front. So in order to get them off the ground, you often need to go through some kind of fundraising, whether it's venture capital or angel investment. And traditionally that is really hard for women to access. So yeah, I've just been really butt-headed about it. I've not ended up going for like investment, but we did a Kickstarter and I've invested a lot. Like I've worked really hard personally to then fund our tech development side of things, so I've not had to go down the venture capital route, because the other thing is it can be a really risky way to fund your business, because if your investors don't like the way that you're running the business, then you can get obviously forcibly bought out. And I don't know, personally, I don't feel safe in that space as a woman, because it's something that if it's already a male dominated space and then you're a female leader, the chances of them not liking how you lead are greater, in my sort of is my reflection on it.
It's interesting hearing about sort of the business side of things, because obviously from a language perspective and sort of using terms which sort of barriers to entry, a lot, that's actually quite a lot of my research is about. So it's really interesting that you've mentioned that kind of unprompted. And then as well, I think, at least in my experience, so I have a degree in computer science. I know how to. I haven't done it since I graduated, but I'm qualified in. So sometimes I'll be sat there in meetings and they're like, oh, how do we fix this problem? How do we do that? And I'll come out with something, oh, like, why don't you just do this as like a workaround? And they all sort of look at me like, what? Like, and fair enough, I'm not a developer. So they may just be looking at me because like, oh, she's not a developer and she's come out with that. But I do think it's like, oh, she knew that. And I think they're always quite like surprised by that. So I think it's interesting, and especially about the business stuff, because I didn't know much about that. I guess it makes sense that people are less likely to invest in women, or I suppose it's kind of the whole, you're trained your whole life to not be as pushy. It's like when asking for pay rises and that kind of thing, generally men, and this is statistically proven, men ask for pay rises more than women do, and so like it just kind of perpetuates the same thing again and again.
So I'm obviously not an expert in any way on that side of things, but it's something that I've explored on a personal level for my own business. And the stats around business, at one point it was like between 3 and 6% of available venture funding went to female founded businesses.
Wow.
And part of the issue is that people fund projects with founders who look like them. And so if all of your founders are white men, then all of the people getting funding are also white men, and it becomes a systemic problem. So yeah, I think it's something to be aware of. And I also know that it might be my own insecurities that have stopped me going forward for that, like knowing that stat. And I wonder how many other women are out there who are also uncomfortable with the idea of going forward because they know that the stats are stacked against them.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I don't know much about it, so I can't comment on that.
Yeah, just like
we're both like, let's not quote stats we don't know.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
interesting. Yeah. So how did you end up doing what you're doing then? Because obviously you have kind of all these different areas of expertise, and you've kind of found a way to sort of marry them all together and okay, this is my niche, this is what I do. But how did you get to that point? Like, what did you start doing?
Yeah, so I started doing SEO in 2005 because I basically, my family was going through a really difficult time financially, and I needed to make some extra money to help pay rent and all that good stuff. And I started writing medical articles for this agency that was based in Poland, and so it was remote work, and this is going back to 2005, so it was like my first foray into the world of freelancing, and it was this remote position, and they paid me $3 per article to
Ooh.
rewrite like 500 words of medical articles basically on the internet, which is why you should never trust anything you read on the internet, because you don't know when it was written. And I was like 15 at the time, and I was paid to research keywords and then basically rewrite these articles, like keyword stuffing them to make sure that they could rank, because it was, you know, back in the days when putting things in your content a certain number of times helped you get to the top of Google. So I started out with that, and then I actually had ended up working in an office for 2.5 years, and I'm a trained accountant. So
Oh wow.
I did that in like my 9 to 5, but I continued to do the marketing freelancing in the evening. And part of the reason I ended up doing the accountancy thing is because so my dad, my name is Turkish, my dad is Turkish, he is an immigrant, and he there was this definite thing in my family of like, you need to have a profession, and you need to, you know, be a doctor, a lawyer, you know, an accountant. And so I went forward for it, and I was like, yeah, this is, you know, it's stable and it's good income and all that kind of thing. And marketing isn't, because it's the creative industries.
Yeah.
It's not you know, it's not a serious job. And so went and did that for 2.5 years, 9 to 5. And just the thing that actually, I was working for Games Workshop at the time, and the thing that actually prompted me to go back into the creative industries was I applied for a promotion, and I got interviewed for it, and then I didn't get the job. And the reason I didn't get the job is the head of finance like took me into an interview room, and she was like, look, you don't want this. You are like too creative, so I could give you this job, and like, you're really well qualified, and I believe that you do a really good job of it, but your heart isn't going to be in it because you are more creative. And I was like really angry at the time, because I was
I
just
can
like, I just want
imagine.
this job.
That should be
But
your
then
decision, not theirs.
yeah, exactly. But looking back, like, she was so right. And I think that taught me quite a lot about hiring as well, because like, you can have people who are, you know, really good for the job and all those things, but actually if they're intrinsically interested in things that are not related to that position, then is it a good long-term investment? So anyway, and then I then I went back to marketing freelancing, and I worked for some different agencies doing freelance work. So writing quite a lot of copywriting for SEO, again, like researching keywords. I worked with an agency for about 8 months writing product descriptions. So like, literally all I did was write product descriptions and research keywords. And I did that. And then I've worked for a couple of agencies in North America, where they basically brought me in-house to consult on SEO projects for clients. You know, things like doing audits for huge agricultural companies that have got like 38 subsidiaries, and, you know, looking at how they restructure their 38 brands into one website, and sort of looking at migration for that kind of thing. So it's been a varied journey, but
Accounting, medical, agriculture, you've got it all.
yeah, so it's interesting because the SEO, like, really, it's from a marketing point of view, like, SEO is this foundational skill, but you have to know how to apply it in like basically every industry. So once you've got the core skills, you can go into a brand, and you can say, okay, so you know, this is what your business does, this is who your customer is, this is how people are searching for you in the language that you're using. So it's a skill that is multi industry focused. That's not a word, but
I know what you
you
meant.
can you can apply it across a lot of different industries. And I think that's probably why I've ended up working as a CMO now, because I've got that, you know, I've worked in so many different industries. I've seen a lot of marketing, and even though SEO has sort of underpinned it all, there's a lot of industry learning that you can get just from watching as well, watching and learning.
So what field do you consider yourself to work in now? Do you see yourself, like you say, as that kind of creative, do you describe yourself as a marketer? Do you work in IT? I know, like you say, SEO, kind of that's your niche,
Yeah.
but what do you say when, you're at the pub, you're meeting someone for the first time, and they go, oh, what do you do for a living? You have to sum it up in a sentence. What field do you associate yourself with?
Yeah, so I'd definitely say marketing now, rather than sort of the IT side of things. And that's because my interests have moved over into more of the strategic side of things. And then obviously, so over the last 2.5, 3 years, I've been working in this sort of freelance CMO role, and it's required me to develop a much broader skill set in terms of how does your overall marketing strategy apply to email marketing and social media and search. And so that now just say I work in marketing, and I actually really enjoy that because my focus is on the strategy. It's like, okay, how do we develop a strategy for this business, and then what does that look like when it flows down into each of these different areas. And I will always take an SEO first approach to my marketing, because that is where, I just find search marketing so fascinating. And I think that there's, because it's got so much longevity built into it, when you start with search marketing and develop your strategy with that first, it flows out into the rest of your marketing really easily, because you can repurpose the content you create for search into things like, Twitter, Facebook, create TikTok videos out of it, do YouTube videos and so on. So yeah, I would say marketing, but obviously with bias towards SEO.
Yeah. I think that's really good. So the final question, I think, what advice would you give to someone who's considering working in SEO? So I'm going to say to young women, because that's kind of the aim of this series, but to anyone really, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think find other people who are in that field and learn from them. The reason that I've got a varied background is because I learn obsessively, and I love finding out how things work, and so on. And I will spend, hours and hours just reading, watching videos, listening to podcasts, finding out as much as I can about a topic. It's a bit boring maybe for some, because I don't have very many hobbies as a result. Like I love learning about new things. And so I think if you go into a field like SEO, you need to have that desire to learn about different things, because it is a varied discipline. So SEO is its own discipline, but you need to understand like how things work on a technical point of view. You need to understand messaging and have some insight into how customers are searching for things. So it is, SEO in itself is its own discipline, but within that it's multidisciplinary, because you have to have be able to talk to people from different sides of marketing as well. So I would just say learn, go to Search Engine Journal, listen to podcasts, play on the internet as well, and just learn how things work, and it serves you well as you go into your career.
Cool. And I'm going to plug you there. So if you want to start somewhere, a great place is by following you. Because like I say, my background's in tech, so I've always understood, when we're learning how to build websites and that kind of stuff, how to build it in to your website, but we weren't taught the kind of keyword side of it. We were taught, here's where they go, here's how you tag things here, and all that kind of stuff, but we were never told like what to put into it. So I've learned a lot from following you, so I really do recommend that you go and follow Menekse. And thank you so much for being part of the series.
Thanks, Alice. Great to chat with you today.